Thank you so much for joining today. I'd like to welcome you to the latest edition of the AIQRATE webinar specials, the CXO series. I hope you've been enjoying the nuggets of wisdom that we've been bringing to you from the industry leaders of today. Today we have for you Anis Merchant, the Global Business Head, Digital and Applied AI at Course 5 Intelligence. He'll be speaking on the topic, Implementing AI at Scale, the Next Frontier. Moderating the session will be Dhanrajani, the CEO and co-founder of AIQRATE Advisory and Consulting. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules. We request you all to all be on silent and mute throughout the entire session to help with the speaking and listening experience of everybody. We will be taking questions towards the end of the session to the last 15 minutes. I request you all to use the Q&A and chat panel that you have in WebEx to put in any questions, and I will relay them to Samir. We'll then accordingly take them up with Anis. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Anis to you. Anis Merchant leads the applied AI and digital business and brings over 23 years of experience to Course 5 Intelligence. He has worked with numerous global Fortune 500 clients across various industries, including retail, travel and hospitality, telecommunications, and technology and media. Last year, he was recognized as 40 under 40 by a premium Indian publication house to honor his digital initiatives. Anis serves as an advisor for the Wiley Innovation Advisory Council. For 2 years in a row, he has co-authored the Wiley Black Book with other esteemed industry leaders in partnership. Anis is certified on Lean Six Sigma with an MBA from NMIMS, Mumbai. Anis, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. Samir, I'll hand it over to you right now.
Thanks, Rohan, and welcome, Anis. It's a pleasure to have you at the webinar session, and this is what, in fact, we've been waiting for in terms of getting a real good set of insights and perspectives. And just to get started and get the ball rolling, I think this is something which is in everyone's mind today about what's going to happen. Now, suddenly we see everyone getting into pre-COVID and a post-COVID mode, and there is something called an interim period which we are all into. Now, you've been interacting with a lot of the clients, a lot of external ecosystem players. What's the pulse in terms of the market you're getting? And I want to be specific about some of these industry sectors of travel, hospitality, technology, CPG, retail. So I would like to get a very quick perspective about the market pulse from your side.
No, Samir, the reaction is of variety across different industries. If you look at the most severe impact, the travel and hospitality, they are almost gone down to a zero base and trying to protect and see how they can still upkeep the brand or keep the brand recognition, because in this case, one of the issue which may be also there that people may forget those brands, which were the stalwart brands. So there is an initiative to see how they can keep the brands live through social or other activities which they are driving and building a brand focus right now. So that's what's happening, because they've had a lot of people who are on the furlough or being let go or a variety of reasons. So that's one aspect which I would bucket, which is almost on a shutdown. Then there are industries which are not in the shutdown, but not in the full steam of doing business also, which may be the retail industry. Largely people who would, whether it's the restaurants or whether they are retail, and retail can be of variety. These can be apparels or footwears or many of them. Some of them have pivoted largely to digital, or they already had digital initiatives. So, they've been able to keep up the business, but the impact of retail has been significant to them. And if you think about restaurants or QSRs or any of them, there is an interesting pivot or interesting, there's a term which I heard, champions adjust. So they are adjusting in a very interesting way. To give you some examples, there are companies like Potbelly and many others who were traditional supplying sandwiches, full-fledged sandwiches, and their business model was, and the crowd they targeted were people who were going out for lunches and quickly go to Potbelly, take a fresh sandwich, and go back to their office. Now there's no more office hours, there's no more lunch hours. So how do you still target and keep the customers whom they had as loyal customers with them? So what they've started doing is they built a digital platform where a customer can order raw products for that sandwich and get it at the home. And they have built online recipes where the customer can replicate those same sandwich recipes at home. So that's a different way where companies are driving. Then there are companies, whether you think about healthcare, CPG, or technology, they have they are still surviving and they are thriving in many ways also because of CPG companies who are in the bare essentials, and healthcare, we all know, they still continue to be the need of the hour. But if you look at technology giants also, they are still able to engage, work both with B2B and B2C customers. So that's what is happening. But I would kind of take a step back. Every company in the what I call, meaning there's a term called BC era, the before coronavirus era, were in the very offensive side of driving business. Many companies have either taken a mix, which is defense and offense, and some people have completely gone into a defensive mode. So that's a very interesting strategy, and based on that, there are many actions which are taken of how companies want to drive their future actions also as we go through this. Yes, so there is BC, which is before coronavirus, there is DC, which is during coronavirus, and there will be AC, which is after coronavirus. And each of them are planning and driving those strategies. Okay, what do we do, and how can we prolong this impact or survive this impact for the longest? Because the biggest fear people have is bankruptcy or going out of business or going out of mind. So how can they prolong that and ride this wave till the time it goes? So yeah, that's what I'm seeing as sentiments, themes coming out from this season of what we are in.
Excellent, excellent. I think this whole BC, AC, DC, I think all those set of acronyms will come into our lexicon very soon. But switching gears, I think one of the things which we are realizing, and having had some leaders represent in our earlier previous webinar sessions, one thing is coming out as a validation that, look, digital agenda needs to be accelerated. It's a given, it's now a table stake, rather it just needs to be done now rather than pushing later. And the bedrock of digital, when we talk about, is AI. And many of the phases of the organizations which, when they were looking at this whole digital transformation agenda, realized their data strategy, forget about AI, but their data strategy itself was in shambles or not in order, very disparate. Now, that is one perennial, I'm sure you know much better than being glued to the market. That's been a perennial impediment for many of the enterprises, large, small, medium, in terms of like our data strategy is kind of really not in place. But on the other side, there is this spectrum that once you take that outlook towards more insights, building intelligence, then the holy grail of AI comes into the picture in terms of benefits. So, what's your view in terms of clients and the wannabe, I would say, clients looking at really doing something and really doing a fine tuning of their data strategy on an accelerated path?
So, in addition to data, there were two other things, which is technology and people, and I would add the culture flavor in the people aspect also. So one of the interest, as you said, the bedrock for digital is AI. I will put customers in or industries in or customers or organizations within the industry in three dimensions. One, who were very on the fence, they would say we're still evaluating whether AI makes sense for our business. The second were largely focused around used AI as an experimentation, as an R&D, rather than really focusing it as a strategic focus, as a strategic enabler. And third, who were really in the forefront of strategic, leveraging AI for a strategic enablement. So there are these three customers. The first one are really struggling, and they are the ones who, probably would go out of business. We fear that they may go out of the business because they were on the fence. They didn't have their data in right. place, the technology in the right place, or the people or the culture was not enabling them to drive this. So that's one of the area which, it's yet to be seen if how long they can drive this wave. And the only way they
Any
will be able to.
particular industry you believe will be hit hard in terms of this particular category?
Uh, you can't broadly because every industry have those lagars,
Sure.
I would say. But if you look at the typical traditional manufacturers in the traditional manufacturing space, whether these are, even if the oil and gas manufacturers or people who've been in the oil and gas, some of them are definitely out there, but some of them are not really adopted data technology and AI, and so that we already seeing an impact because of that for them because they are not able to build scenarios, they are not able to build pivot. As a culture, they are not able to move fast. So that's what is also inhibiting them. Similarly, people who've been in the traditional manufacturing, whether these are core, hardcore manufacturing, whether you think about chemicals or plastics or wood, those sectors are going to be hit massively because they relied in a physical value chain, not in a digital value chain till date. So that's where the impact will be seen maximum. Uh, I'm sure there will be bailouts which will come through because these are the necessities of life from a value chain perspective, but they will be hit maximum, at least in my perspective. Uh, but if you really talk about the other two categories, people who are in the forefront, the interesting thing which I was talking about the defense, the companies who are in the forefront have been able to leverage AI to really defend and also propel and pivot in ways which people never thought about. Right? So if you look at the likes, people who've been earning money from the advertisement. Today, advertisement is almost zero, right? I would not say it's 100% zero, but it is very close to. It's in the single dot. Companies are not investing money, and that is getting impacting. Whether you think about the media industry, which is basically getting impacted because of advertisement inflow not coming in, or if you look at large companies who had these platforms where advertisements were being rolled out, they've been able to pivot and they've been able to go ahead and focus on businesses which they had as test cases or they were doing pilot and now they are seeing a big uptake in that. Or their core base businesses has seen a big uptake, so they are focusing a lot on that and they are able to spread the entire energy, whether you think about data, technology, and people energy to drive and strengthen that ecosystem effectively, which they couldn't think about. Like if you just think about what is happening to Netflix or Z5 in India or Amazon Prime, the amount of traffic they're getting, they didn't even think about that they will be getting that kind of traffic. Now they're able to push that energy within the organization towards that to enable and support that. If it was a regular day, I'm saying for some of them, it's, these big events which happen in the US, the Black Friday or the Thanksgiving weekend, it's happening every day to them for some of them because it's that kind of traffic and madness which is going on in that space. The middle one, uh, the AI strategies which were more aspirational because of the acumen and the culture, for some of them, they're stalling it. They're saying we don't want to invest in that because it's looked upon as an investment, not as a core. And there are some who are saying, hey, our competition or our brothers in the industry are able to pivot because of AI. So they are doubling down on that. And they are able to go ahead and simplify and strengthen the processes which are core to the business and push the energy, and I'd say the energy, push the people energy to focus on new or pivot or drive new areas. So the middle one is a very interesting sector, I would say. And there are companies in across different industries which are trying to do that. Whether you think about CPG, whether you think about retail, whether like the other big one which you spoke about, the most impact is apparels. Any company who's in the apparel space is getting impacted severely as well. And that entire value chain, if you think about, because it's a non-essential. Nobody's thinking about buying clothes or buying footwear or buying jewelry or buying accessories. That's not on anybody's top of mind. Nobody's going for a ski, nobody's going for camping or hiking. So that entire value chain is getting impacted. But they are also pivoting, they are also surviving, and they continue to do business, some of the big ones. And the other ones are struggling today because of the lack of focus on AI and digital initiatives.
So if I take the viewpoint and spectrum of the industries. Now, taking that scenario, Anis, over there, I think one of the biggest area which AI has always been entrenched and embedded into has been this customer acquisition, the whole kind of, let's say, customer value journey and all. Now, given the situation today, the players who've been pioneers or who've been kind of very steady in terms of adopting AI suddenly realize that customer journey mapping exercise, their entire models which were based in terms of customer acquisition from upsell, cross-sell needs to be revisited. Do you think this also is an opportunity area for AI pure play providers, consulting companies to really say, look, yeah, maybe this is a time where new strategic aspects to look at the market kind of scenario, plus looking at new assumption and variables needs to be captured. And also it's like strengthening the whole kind of algorithms to give more insights. Is that something you believe is an opportunity?
Yeah, I am seeing that as a massive opportunity. And I'll give you an analogy, the old wine in a new bottle. If you just think about companies who focused on brand and the purpose, those are being tested in a significant way. You know, companies who said our purpose is this or our purpose is that as an organization. Companies who are able to propel that further, because you spoke about customer acquisition. Today, you and I, all of us, are resorting to brands and platforms which we always have engaged and we have somewhat trust. So what happens to the new one? Or if somebody wants to acquire me as a customer, how do they get in front of me? The only way they will be able to get in front of me if they are able to hold or uphold the brand promise or the platform promise they have and showcase that purpose statement right up front. So from a customer acquisition, the interesting thing which we are seeing, it's not just about let's go ahead and spend our money on email marketing or digital marketing or all of that. What people are saying, can we use a brand and a strength of brand and push it up using digital channels, using platforms which we are, but with innovative content and messaging. And that can only happen where AI can tell you what is the sentiment, what is the pulse, what are people thinking about, what people are looking for. Why would they care about your brand? Why would they care about your platform? Is that in top of the mind? Is it a priority A, priority B, priority C for you? All of that becomes a very interesting factor, right? So they're still using that brand, which was, you know, brand measurement, brand analytics was always a good old exercise for many companies. Uh, so, for us as a company or as a, you know, clients where we work with, this is something which everybody is evaluating very strategically, and they're using the power of AI and analytics to go ahead and identify those nuggets. Because right now there's so much of overload of information. Also, you know, the philosophy I have is our eyes are maxed out, our ears are not. So how are they trying to see, okay, how they can get that share of eye space within the market and get that messaging right? So there's a lot of that sparking of the senses in their messaging, in the conversation, so that people remember, oh, that's the brand which is there. It's talking about it, and they're using the power of senses to evoke emotions, because emotions are high today. Also, so people are able to understand emotions, and AI can tell you what emotions are today. You know, the 8 dimensions of emotions. Actually, there are 32. 8 are major, and there are 4 in each of those 8. So they are able to evoke that and able to understand that and use that in the messaging to really focus and drive their initiatives further.
Nice. So moving on to a higher gear now, there is one aspect which is getting discussed in the boardrooms, the CXO conversation. That look, it's like we are data rich, information poor, insight starved, and our decision making process specifically to tackle pandemics, black swan events, and even the day to day functioning of the organization enterprise needs to change. The past and the previous kind of models in terms of the business planning exercise. And I give that analogy very clearly that look, I mean, for the folks, enterprises who created 2020 planning, where is that? Had the whole thing has been, I mean, had been applied in terms of creating that algorithm, which would have started kind of really getting into more of a self-learning approach, maybe things would have been different. Of course, not many of the factors would have been. Back to the question, this whole aspect of conversations where we talk about leadership, adopting AI, bringing AI at scale, has always been, I would say, on two sides, skeptics and kind of, let's say, the naysayers. And really, that thing has always been there that, look, we got to do it. But if we really talk about this next frontier, hey, which are those companies outside of the new normal, which have we've always heard, they have really cracked this code and they are doing it AI at scale. Do you have a perspective over there? And I'll take a second question after this, or rather pose a second question after this, which is more about how do we go about doing this AI at scale?
See, I believe AI at scale should be not within the core hub or the experts who are there within the organization, who understand data, who understand AI, who understand technology. AI at scale can be achieved even to a blue collar worker at your factory. How can you enable AI at that level? And for all of them, right, if you go down to that value chain, there are business users, there are people who are creative, they may not be data acumen, people who know how to drive business but don't understand data, right? How do you enable AI at scale for them? For that, you can draw three circles of influence: the inner circle, the outer circle, and the bigger circle. How can you take AI to that bigger circle, which do not get involved in the day-to-day decision making, do not use data, do not use technology, but they are the front end foot soldiers who will make or break the company. And that's and I can tell you, I'm seeing those examples with companies where the simple analogy is, how can you show them anomalies, and just three anomalies in their day-to-day work, right? Which is very interesting. As a human mind, we can't take those huge dashboards or which huge colors and tell a front soldier, like, take an analogy of a war. If you take a front soldier and say, hey, I'm going to give you a dashboard. If the army is going to move two steps here, go ahead and slice and dice your dashboard and think about what you should do next. Poor guy will get killed on the in the the war, right? It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So taking that same analogy, how do you make it simple and easy for information, decision, data, insights to reach those front end soldiers at AI scale? Whether it is decision making, whether it is steps in the process, how do you make it easier for them? Either it is a three-step process. As human beings, we can always remember three things pretty easily, right? So how do you show those anomalies or those three steps? Take these three steps, or the first step, second step, third step, or try those three strategies and do that. And I'm seeing that companies are thinking in those, hey, we don't have time to go ahead and slice and dice in the current scenario, in the DC scenario, going back to my DC scenario. We just need, when I wake up in the morning, like how all of us are looking at the current stats of COVID, I want to look at my current stats in simple English. What's happening? What should I focus on? Three things. That's it. I don't have time to go and slice and dice a dashboard. And this is applicable for a front end salesperson, a merchandiser, a marketeer, a creative person, somebody who's managing platforms, all of them. Even an IT person who needs to look at, okay, what threats am I going to face today?
So one thing, however, and this is also my question, and I was looking at the screen, there was a question which came in just, and I'm trying to blend with your narrative, Anis, is the quintessential aspect, leadership doesn't get it. Because everyone understand the virtues, the benefits, the whole kind of, let's say, the larger than life and the magic of AI. But this aspect about evangelization, aspect about really internalizing has always been elusive. And it's been there for a couple of years, I mean, or rather last 4 5 years. And at some level, you see that, look, the mid and the level down below have started understanding that, look, we got to get it, but the leadership is taking time to really warm up to that. What's your sense over there?
See, it's not that leadership is not, they are well informed, but there is a big difference between logic and emotion. When you build business cases and you are able to propel and show the value of that business case and an opportunity case, like opportunity case scenario, like if you don't do this, we going to have opportunity loss. If you keep the emotions away, because typically people who are driving AI within an organization, or you bring in an external partner, it's a highly emotional driven. But if you try to give it a logical, like, more as an ROI. Everybody within the board are looking at balance sheet. Okay, if they're going to, what's going to be the assets, what's going to be the liabilities which they are going to have as part of this entire exercise? Because there is a lot of misconceptions about AI, which are true to a certain extent, like privacy, right? All of those, and piracy also, if you look at it from a media industry, when you think about digital. So those misconceptions or fears are there, which inhibits many people to even take first step. Forget about 20 steps further or anybody. That fear, how do you take that fear out and show that how do you manage that fear? And show what is the path, and don't show like a blue pill dream. How you're able to show, how can you protect the current set of business, and I'm talking about the current scenario. How are you able to currently protect what we have and prolong the scenario so that our business can sustain? That is enabling the board to take that decision further. But you need to have that conviction, and you need to have, but conviction without emotions, conviction with logic. That's a big difference here, because I'm also very emotional right now, and I'm showing that passion about AI, but I can't show that to my executives, right? If I'm presenting to them, because for them, they will be looking at logic, and emotions will take you to the first 5 minutes of your presentation or your conversation. After that, they will all stress test on your logic. And if you can have your logic right on the investments in AI and what areas they should focus on, then it will make big difference. And that's what I've seen it work.
Logic right is what you're really kind of asking the boards and CXOs to do. Absolutely. I think, yeah, it's something which is paramount at this stage in terms of really getting those new thinking hats in place. So keeping that in view, Anis, and I'm shifting and taking your analogy out here is this AC period, the after Corona period. Everyone is going back to the drawing board and really saying, look, yeah, we understand we got to do it at scale, and AI needs to be really looked from a new lens. Now, in the AC phase, what we're talking about, what do you suggest should be the new strategic blocks of building AI at scale, irrespective of the segment one belongs or the kind of, let's say, revenues you hold or the kind of, let's say, aspirations you have? But it's since it's on the charter for many, there is always this whole aspect, okay, show me that picture, how AI at scale can be built. So what's Anis Merchant view, and this is your view coming in the AC period after Corona about AI at scale built up from a strategic level?
So there are three things which I will touch upon, Samir. So the first thing is, what is the strategic role of AI in the business itself, of defining that? Okay, and that's a core building block. See, every organization cannot be a Google or an Amazon, right? They cannot even have that view that we will become an Amazon of the industry which we are in. And I think that's something which is a critical aspect for organizations to understand, that have the right aspirations. I'll take an example because I've done some research recently through my podcast. Is Merge Shipping, if you look at what they are doing. And I'll just take one example of what Maersk has done. Uh, my father and my family is in shipping, so I understand a little bit about shipping as an industry. It's a very complicated industry, and a simple quote to get from a shipping industry, what would this product or my cargo would take from a point A to point B, and point A can be my house to the dock where I wanted to get shipped, or point A can be my house to the receiver I'm going to go ahead and. So there is a lot of complications. It's a highly permutated combination, and there are a lot of complexity and complexities which change every hour, because fuel prices, economic conditions in the country define what the price would be. So there are various factors which are involved. Now, using AI, using data, using technology, Maersk has digitally transformed that and made it completely transparent, because one of the biggest issues they had is lack of transparency, and that led to customer trust as a bigger issue. Now, if you look at that they have made that entire platform, you can get a quote by filling up all your details. If I know if I'm shipping a cargo, I know what details I need to supply. And if I do that, I can get a quote right there and there in 5 minutes, which would typically take 2 days, 10 days, 15 days, and it will be a more one-to-one relationship. So going back to that strategic role of AI, and there are three dimensions of what AI can play as a strategic role. One, it is a core value proposition of your organization, which people like Google and Amazon follow. Like AI is seamlessly embedded within the organization and its core value proposition. The second, it's a strategic enabler. And third, you are dabbling with it, you're playing with it, right? Then better not do it. And ideally, nobody should adopt that. If anybody is thinking, oh, we'll dabble into it, we'll see, we'll do some R&D, we'll do some test cases. So that is the first building block for AI within an organization. So I can go on to the next one if you don't have questions on this.
So, okay, why don't you continue? Because the question I have a follow-up is on a different, I would say, aspect altogether. Why don't you continue, please? Yeah.
The second thing is a 3-year or a 5-year roadmap. Yes, you were speaking about the 2020. Let me tell you, AI transformation or digital transformation doesn't happen over a night, right? It takes 18 months, 36 months. It takes time, right? Because there are a lot of moving parts. And to drive that, you need to have a accountability matrix or sorts, which help you be the guiding principle or a North Star of what will, based on the strategic role you've defined of your AI, okay, keeping that in mind, how will that now translate to your business goals? And these business goals can be of 5 dimensions in my mind. First is, okay, how is AI going to enable grow the business or pivot our business? That's the first thing. The second is, okay, how is AI going to help us retain what we have, whether it is retaining our customers, retaining our employees, retaining our business. The third is, how can AI help us manage our business? And these businesses can be supply chain, operations, HR functions, finance functions, all of that. The fourth is the cost of doing business. How can AI enable and help us improve the cost of doing business? And last one, how do we create competitive advantage within the market using AI? Because AI just doesn't help you get you more revenue, save cost, or generate cost. It can also generate competitive advantage, which differentiates you as compared to others. And that's the second building block is, having that grid in front of you or a scorecard, which becomes your North Star scorecard, which you are driving. And there is some accountability towards it. Whether it's a leader who's driving AI strategy is being held accountable, or the entire organization is being held accountable that we need to drive that. And talking about accountability, and this is my third building block, which often people miss. While executives or while the board, you gave an example, yes, let's go ahead and do AI initiatives, but they have to walk the talk. That's the critical thing, which we often see missing, which goes back to accountability that everybody, even the board, how many board members or how many boards, when you look out, you have an AI strategist sitting in that board who can help guide the board. It's not that, the board has knowledge. They may be aware, but that knowledge to take the right decision is missing. So walking the talk is critical. Second is, when I talk about accountability, is accountability at all levels. How do you drive accountability? There is a question about culture. Even I saw that in the chat window, and we can double click on that culture. How do you drive that? And there are ways to drive that about accountability. And I feel there are 2 areas. One is facilitation. You can't just go ahead and say we are we are deploying AI, but there should be some facilitation initiatives which gives comfort to people to enable that. And the second area is incentivization. Also, to people, and I was talking about the front soldier, that if there is incentivization to them to use AI as a augmented capability to their work, will enable them and they can show that path. It's need not incentivization is not always about money. It's not always giving out an extra dollar to somebody, but it's about how do you take, if you use AI, you can get your sales outcomes pretty effectively, or you can get your marketing or your creative outcomes pretty effectively, or your supply chain initiatives or your demand initiatives pretty effectively. So those are the 3 building blocks in my mind, which are the critical elements for organizations to really scale after the AC or during the AC era.
Okay, awesome, awesome. I think we've got a good set of, I would say, a set of new codes, which really kind of gives us a good rumination in terms of what could be a kind of a, let's say, new charter or a new strategic approach in terms of building AI at scale. But on the other side, if I look at the spectrum, Anis, there is also an expectation that AI pure play providers, firms, consulting players who are providing that AI expertise. Now, the models, capabilities, solutions, services will also go for a change because we are tuned to a certain aspect. Okay, let's build a center of excellence. Let's provide those specific kind of, let's say, competencies in terms of those talent. Let's also look at kind of creating own specific areas of POCs and all. Can you foresee and also provide more insights about what could be these new models in terms of a go-to-market approach by the players?
So Samir, this DC era during the coronavirus era is bringing a very interesting perspective for many organizations, and across industries. It is not a industry, right? If you just look at healthcare also, and I'll talk about what that is collaboration and collaboration at scale. Like there are companies who would never develop ventilators. That was never part of their value chain. Have now come forward and said, we will develop ventilators for you. We will gift those ventilators, or we will provide those ventilators provide to you, or the N95 mask. So collaboration is going to become critical for organizations. They know that they alone cannot fight this, because that mentality has been there with many organizations till date, that hey, if AI is going to be strategic for us, we need to do it in house. We need to protect that IP. We need to go ahead and drive that IP forward, right? So that IP question or that strategic focus is going to change the dimension of where people would want to collaborate extensively, because this is also bringing a new culture or introducing a new culture of collaboration at scale. Whether you look at organization or whether you look at our lives, we are all got into the habits of collaboration now more extensively than anything more. So that operating model of collaboration is going to scale pretty effectively. That second thing, which also ties into the collaboration, where certain organizations would say, we can build everything. We don't need to buy technology, right? From a technology angle, they would now go ahead and severely adopt technologies, because they will say, hey, we don't have time, because if certain situation like this has to happen again, we don't have time to do it. So the essence of time is going to be critical, right? And people will understand the value of time to react and value of time to change, which is also going to be a second piece which people will focus on. So those are my perspectives, that when you think about collaboration and value of time and essence of time is going to change on how service providers, consulting, technology companies are going to come forward and either build consortiums, or companies are going to bring them into the fold and say, hey, let's work together to go ahead and drive the strategy forward.
So collaboration, consortiums, and a lot of those associations will become the rule, the new rule in terms of this aspect of managing. I have one aspect to cover on that, which you talked about, but we could not discuss in detail, Anis, the culture. But we'll come to that. There is a question which I want to take, and this is a pertinent question, and in terms of the person really asking, I'll just quote verbatim that. This person's this person has done investment in AI in marketing specifically as a function, and has seen and witnessed a very average ROI. And now they want to implement it across in terms of AI at scale to uplift the ROI. Is there a kind of, let's say, way to go about, since you've already seen a not so good result, but now we want to take it to the level which is across organizations? So is there an approach which can be actually uh, triggered to kind of ensure that this is managed at best in terms of AI at scale?
Sure. So, if somebody who's there and who comes to me and say, hey, I'm a marketer, I've done this. So when I talk about not so good result, I will break that not so good result into two dimensions. One is people will call this as failures. I will call them as learnings, right? And those learnings can be of various initiatives. Was your data not right, which you spoke earlier? Was your technology not able, or was your culture not there to go ahead and change that? Right. So what are those learnings, so that if they want to scale it across the organization, where let's say today you're doing it within marketing, the next possible one can be sales, or next possible can be finance. What are those learnings which you have within marketing? You should go ahead and share that with the finance or with the sales. Do not go ahead and drive that, right? And then take the positives, because it's not that they have had all bad choices, but they have also had good choices. So those good choices, what are those ones which were experimented and they are very niche to marketing? And what are the ones which are replicable? Because in AI, one of the fundamentals people forget, that as you go through that AI journey, you develop accelerators, which are transient to any department and any company or any industry, which can become the core asset for the organization, which can be the competitive differentiation for the organization. For example, if you've developed an NLP engine, it's transient to any department within the company. It's not focused one department, whether let's say marketing in this case. So how do you take those nuggets and deliver them across the organization? And that can give you exponential outcomes. It's not it can be a 10x outcome just using those accelerators which you've been developed through those journeys. So, somebody who asked me that question, there is positive. I'm an optimistic person. I can see optimism outcomes even through those not so good results of achieving through that. But
So if we take that thing, and I'm chiming in, Anis, that's a very solid thing what you said about how looking at those realization learnings, one can create those spaces of opportunities. But here's also one aspect what we talk about that yesterday I was having a session with the head of AI, COE from NASCOM, and we discussed about creating this marketplace of combining all these data operators, putting all that open data in a platform, building those algorithms from various players. Can company specifically per se at their own level look at creating an algorithm repository for various functions and opening it up to say, look, these are the problems we are facing, or put your problem, you get some kind of an aspect which is like a set of decisions, insights, recommendations, and you can start taking that as a first source of truth. And tomorrow, then you can build it up in terms of your own kind of, let's say, learning. Is there something which, as a quasi kind of a, let's say, recommendation engine, which can exist for organization?
I'll answer this question in a very different way, Samir. I was talking to invited on a panel about a couple of months back before all these lockdowns happened in a large pharma company. And they were talking and they were stressing on this problem of millennials. And when I looked at the crowd, they were mostly their own employees. It was in a very internal session. People like me who've been in the company or who have been in the career journey for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? And what I told them, and the only feedback I share is, we're all focusing on millennials. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong to focus on millennials, but the people sitting here, the wealth of business knowledge they may not have AI knowledge, they may not have technology knowledge, but they have the application knowledge. They have seen how this industry and how the company has weathered different storms across the board. If you give them the context of what AI can do, they can be the best custodians of the applications. They can come up with initiatives which nobody else can, right? So that negation or the neglecting part, which many companies do, they should avoid that and propel, to your point, communicate it further and simplify the language. One of the other things which many companies often do, make AI look like an ivory tower initiative. Only certain people or exclusive people will be able to understand and decipher it. But if you can simplify that and make it a common language across the organization so that people who are on the forefront can understand the usage and the benefit, can deploy it at scale. And they will be the people who will be most excited. Hey, this will simplify my life. I will go ahead and do it more further. So I think that's the way I would answer your question, that communicate, but involve the people who are actually been there in the organization for a long time, because they will be your stalwarts to go ahead and drive it, and not the newbies or the newcomers. Samir, you're on mute. You're on mute.
That I was so engrossed in terms of what you were saying, kept myself on mute. So taking one other aspect, and this is a question which is coming, you talked about this co-creation, collaboration, consortia, build-up. Incubation hubs, transformation hubs have been there for quite some time. And considering that there are spate of startups in AI who are doing some cutting edge work over there, is there a way organizations can actually leverage those incubation hubs by bringing those kind of, let's say, different aspects of startups? And again, I think what the question is entailing in terms of really looking at that approach, how do you kind of create value by leveraging startups? And this is, of course, specific to AI we are talking about. And startups comes with different capabilities, solutions, prototypes, MVPs, products. So how's that whole ecosystem of leveraging startup works in terms of AI at scale builder?
No, and to your point, Samir, I've seen a lot of large companies having these ventures they have set up, which their role is to go ahead and become the incubation arms or drive the incubation of new initiatives
Let me ask you, are they really successful or they're still testing the waters?
No, they've been massive failures. I'm being very cut and dry here because those companies have had incubation centers. Today, we are seeing struggles with them. Because I would put that struggle failure point to that to those ventures or to those incubation hubs which they have set up within the organizations, these large organizations. However, I'll give you another example, and this is in the Middle East, a bank which I've come across. Uh, you know, it's a little draconian when you think about it, but it's beautiful what they have done, and I've experienced it firsthand. They have something called as Mancom. They call it as a managing committee, and that Mancom is definitely the key leaders. But then there is a extended Mancom which is about 150 people, and they literally have a theater style presentation. So let's say if they want to incubate ideas, all 150 people get presented to, and they are everybody who are representing HR, finance, the investment banking side, the retail banking side, the corporate banking side. Everybody is there. The heads are there. Even people 2 or 3 levels, people whom they would nominate to come and be there. And I was talking about involvement. It's a class. It's not a multinational bank. It's a bank sitting in Middle East, doing business in Middle East only, is adopting this. And I have seen success of AI adoption there, right? And large companies who are, and okay, somebody can argue it's a bank which is regional, they can do this, they can afford to do this. But today, technology, what we are doing today, allows you to connect virtually also. You don't need to be physically present in one place. So that involvement aspect is critical. And companies like that who are able to incubate ideas and have driving those incubation cultures are really working out. Versus companies who've had developed these ventures or these uh, private equity funds within those organizations, again, they're like they are in their own world. They have not gone down to the real world problems of the company and found out, okay, these are the problem statements, the need statements, or the uh, aspirations which the company or the businesses have or the teams have. How do we take that and map it to what the external world is providing? That is not done. Versus what other thing is being done is looked upon as an outside world. Oh, these are the new toys in the town. Let's try to force fit them in the organization. And there you are seeing maximum resistance, failure, all of that. So
Maybe
I
it's
would
a
say,
factorial of who's managing, if the person really has that background in terms of evaluating what AI is all about and maybe the magic of AI.
and in fact, I would say somebody who should lead AI is not a PhD or a data scientist. Somebody who knows how to build relationships. I think those are the best people, and I've seen the they are like T-shaped skills. They will be the best people to lead AI, and I've seen them succeed exponentially. Right? They know how to drive business. They know how to build relationships, and they now know, okay, how can I drive that? And using that power of relationship and changing that culture and driving that relationship, I've really seen a big success.
Great, great. One of the thing which Anis we couldn't touch, but it's pertinent, is this culture piece. Uh, and culture is a segue in terms of bringing AI at scale. Specifically, we are talking about, and some of the questions have also come in about this whole aspect, what you touched upon, that the classical value chains of the businesses are getting demystified. Even to the extent I keep on saying the strategic theories of the past, be it with all due regards the Porter theory of the competitive advantage or the Shumantra Ghoshal theories, have all actually started getting irrelevant. Now, culture is also about breeding new topical best practices frameworks in the organization, and AI could be a secret sauce or a Trojan horse, or could be like a hindering block considering how it's adopted. What's your view in terms of organizations who are trying to look at bringing AI at scale, really kind of instilling a culture which is akin to building culture with respect to building the next level of organization?
See what happens with the culture dynamics and the AI dynamics, and when you bring that together, people think that, oh, we need to change and transform our culture to adopt AI. I always recommend, when we talk to the board members or we talk to the C-suite, or at least when I do that, the fundamental piece is, I would say, what is your core strengths of your organization? Have you evaluated that? What has helped you thrive, survive, and fight out the competition till date? There's something in the organization which is helping you, and that's your culture. Have you been able to decode that? And how now can AI, and I always say AI is not a replacement, it's an augmentation. Like if you take 2 steps, will it allow you to take 2 steps or will it allow you to take 22 steps? And can AI infuse in that core fundamentals of your culture and allow you to take 22 steps by just taking those 2 steps ahead? And I think that's something which I would say from a culture perspective, many companies do this mistake. Oh, our culture is bad, right? We need to change. We need to transform. We need to go ahead and change. Like if you read Satya's book, Hit Refresh, he literally has hit refresh for Microsoft. But what he worked on is the core principles of Microsoft's culture. What got them together? What drove them together? How did he drive that? And then he used power of technology, AI, to augment that and transform and realize people, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to help you. Yes, there are certain things he's on the way disrupted, but he didn't do it day one, right? Because he had people do that themselves. He didn't do it because often leaders have that dilemma. If I do it, I'll be looked upon as a bad apple, right? So that's something which is a fear also. So it's a classic, like a company behemoth like Microsoft have been able to hit refresh and become the world leader and become one of the most valuable companies. It's because of how he took culture and took the fundamentals which the companies were strong at, not try to bring in new culture. And there was already those culture prevalent within the company.
True. And Microsoft is, to your point, is a great example in terms of how the organization really leveraged the intent, what was created by Satya, and the whole underpinning was breathing, exuding, and really kind of evangelizing the value of AI, what it can bring for the business, the customers, as well as the entire ecosystem. And truly, what you said is true. And also, one aspect I want to touch upon, Anis, and that's also part of the question is which has come in. Now, and you talked about this T-shaped professional very well in terms of the depth and the breadth in terms of the new age professionals. Often we are talking about skilling at a level where we need more AI professionals, experts, and all. But the thing which is often neglected is we also don't have AI leaders. How do you go about creating an AI leader?
See, even I'm not.
This is a tough one because I personally have never asked this question in any forum.
I can give you my own analogy. I'm a BCom grad, right? I've done my MBA. I was not an engineer or a technologist in my education background, right? So I can take my own example. But how I have developed, our companies or my mentors have developed me in this space is using my strengths. And what were my strengths? And people have realized, either were my coaches or my mentors have made me realize what was my strength. Even though I've done BCom, this is always a stigma. People in finance or people in BCom, one fundamental thing is that they are good with numbers. Maths is, and the fundamentals of data science is numbers, maths, right? So that's one thing. Second thing is on the T shape, how do you make them realize the level of application, or how do you get into the sense of application? How would you apply something? And I would use a famous training. If people want to learn how to apply, I would advise people, if they are really looking to become AI professionals, go through this program, which is called the LEGO program, Lego School of Management, right? And there is actually, it's a very, very fun exercise, right? It brings out that inner child in you. And you can see me grinning right now because I love Legos. But it teaches you to apply your creativity. With the blocks which you have, the building blocks which you have, and you can build anything you want. Nobody is giving you a prescription, but you can go ahead and there's a lot of training modules around that. How do you use that? And there are trainers who train people on those building blocks. So that's it invokes people's mindset. Oh, I can do things even just not having a basic sense of, I'm not an architect. I can still build a structure which I didn't think I would be able to do, right? With simple steps and with knowledge and with certain fundamental steps and basic knowledge of how the blocks fit in. So that's the other piece, is the application. which I'm going as an example. And third, naturally, you can't avoid the acumen of numbers and data. Like, the basic sense, like today, many leaders I talk about, they don't even understand the types of data. What is a continuous variable? What is these variable types? How would you derive that? I'm talking basics, which may say, hey, this is basic. But yeah, these basics are missing with many organizations and with the leaders. And the fourth piece is technology, the awareness of technology and the application of technology. You don't need to be a technologist. You don't need to be understanding what Python does. You need to know what Python does, but don't need to program on Python, for example. Or what you need to know, for example, what Bayesian does or the application of Bayesian. If you know what the basic principles of why, but you don't need to code Bayesian, for example. So these basic building blocks for building leaders, I think is fundamental who doesn't have that acumen of AI in an organization. This can be replicated for board members. This can be replicated for leaders, business, team members, all of that, to show them the power of knowledge and apply the now principles of AI to transform.
Wonderful, wonderful. We would have loved to continue, Anis, but we are at the top of our must say. I think by far this is a conversation. I'm sure not only we took multiple themes, but I think covered a lot of spectrum in terms of leadership to talent to strategy to culture to really building those blocks of AI at scale. And I think the best part of the narrative I could really see that while I was engrossed in terms of listening to you was it was punctuated by a lot of those examples, a lot of those real life scenarios, because that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of our participants really understanding that look, there is a validation which is coming in the approach. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate, and I hope the participants enjoyed the session. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.